too.
Thank you.
Ellen.
Do you prefer the instructions in English?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay. Each team has 20 minutes to present its case to the judges. The time is indicated on the timer as a countdown right here. In case of a problem, I will indicate the remaining of the time with posters. If you do not end your presentation after 20 minutes, it will be stopped and move on to a period of questions. A period of questions of a maximum duration of 5 minutes is assigned to the jury at the end of the presentation. I would like to remind the jury that it is mandatory to ask at least one question during this period. Please note that you cannot reveal the name of your city, as you may be disqualified. I would like to ask the public to turn off their cell phone. I will now invite the judges to introduce themselves.
Deviens fait mon nom.
Devgelina Desjardins Securities.
Hamidi Madin. Marilyn Desjardins. Let's imagine on my head, there's a glass of water. There are two people in this world. One who look at this glass of water and see it's half full. The other will look at this glass of water and see it's half empty. Syra people right now are currently looking at this glass of water half empty. We present to you a project today that will allow the Syra people to look at this glass of water half full. Good afternoon, board of directors. My name is Tran. Here are my colleagues, Chi, Tristan, and we are from V Consulting. On our agenda for today, we'll start off with a mandate to see why we're here today. And we'll follow up with our recommendations, what kind of projects are we looking to implement. We'll follow up by an analysis that we have done, as well as all the financials that we have calculated. And it will wrap up with a conclusion.
So, on the mandate, there are three that we'd like to highlight. First is the appreciation of the project, the desalination plant of Syra. That is the main reason why you want to invest in this country. Second, improve the profitability of the project without having the price. What are some things that we can to add value without having to affect the profitability? And then third, it was the...
And then the third one is to increase the share, to determine the fair value of share price. It's going to be issued in December 15 this year, and we are going to issue 1 million shares. So just to wrap up everything with a recommendation, we are going to vote for the desalination project. We are going to recommend you 3 ways to improve the profitability of the project. First of all, is to repurpose the brine, the disposal waste that you're producing. Secondly, to shift to the use of solar energy with electricity. And third one is to scale the capacity of the plant. As for the valuation, we believe that as of December this year, the share is going to be valued at $63, €63. But if you are going to incorporate our recommendation, it's going to go up to €75.
Now, let's jump into the analysis. First, we'll look at the stakeholders that are involved. First, we'll look at the Republic of Syra. It is a government entity. It's come to you and the need for the fresh waters for its citizens. There is Syra Drinking Water Society, SEPS, the company that requires the Crown Corp that requires the purchases of the fresh water. And then Lasadem, the private company, the new one that is going to build and operate the plant for you for the next 30 years.
For the fourth stakeholder in this case would be National Energy Authority of Syra. The role would be to provide the source of energy to run the planet they're currently looking at. The fifth stakeholder in this case would be you, Capino Financial Group. You will be the one who will be financing this project and make it come to life and able to make that glass of water full again. And lastly will be the citizens. They are the one who's had the most impact, who are looking to get fresh water on a daily basis just for their well-being. So based on these all stakeholders, we have created a matrix with 3 criteria. So firstly, we'll be ranking on their importance, so how important each of the stakeholders are in this project. The second would be how urgent would it be that would affect each of the stakeholders. And thirdly, would be the power. Would they be able to have the power to affect or take the decision to make this project come to life? So based on these three rankings, the three stakeholders that we have outlined that fills in all the criteria will be Republic of Syria and SEPs, which is the Crown Corporations. So a key takeaway from this stakeholder matrix is that the project is highly important for all stakeholders. However, the decision-making power is relied solely on mainly the government, the financial institution, as well as the private and the crown corporations. But the ones who are being affected by this project are mainly the citizens, and who feel the urge to make this project come to life as soon as possible because it affects their current living, will be the citizens, the Republic of Syria, which is the government, and as well as the Crown Corporation.
So, what are the benefits of these projects? Well, first of all is the public health. Access to clean water, it gives birth to medical or any of the sorts. But then also it's a chance of increasing growth economy. There has been forecast that it will attract tourism. If the fresh water is clean, they're more likely to come. But the idea is that this is also a project. You're going to operate it within 30 years. That is an employment opportunity for the government to then say that we're increasing jobs for the economy. But then that also brings to the third part. Recently, the government has a high turnover with the new power. With this implementation of the project, you now are focusing the long-term growth of the economy, which supplements the long-term stability of the citizens' perception. So therefore, we highly recommend to pursue this desalination project.
So now that we know that the project is a must-go for Syria, we believe that it's worth looking into the valuation of the project to see how profitable it is in terms of the numbers. Let's first look into the revenue. So the revenue, it comes from the fresh water that we are going to sell to the Crown corporations. It has two components. The first one is the demand from the SEPs, which is the Crown corporations. They said that they're going to commit to our full capacity of 160,000 cubic meters after 10 years. But before that, they are not going to do so. So we divided the demand in three scenarios: medium scenario, low and high, with the highest probability standing on the medium scenario. The second part is the selling price. So the SEPs commit to buy from us at 78 cents per cubic waters. However, the price is going to change according to the increase in operating cost, which is based in inflation. We times these two and we get the revenue. Now let's look at each of the components in details. You can see on the graph right here, the columns represent the demand from the SEPs. So every year from 2023 up until 2029, they are going to purchase less than full capacity. But then after that, they're going to purchase at 160,000 cubic meters per day. As for the price, you can see the blue line right here, it increased gradually with the cost of inflation, with the operating cost. We are going to dive into the operating cost in more detail later on, but most of the time it is based on the 2% inflation that Syria is experiencing. So in details, it goes from 78 cents to around $26 in 30 years. Now let's look into operations cost. We know that it comes from variable and fixed cost. The variable cost only comes from the electricity and the chemicals and supply. We have the data on how much the plant is going to cost at full capacity. Therefore, we have the per cubic meter cost per each of them. And let's change to Tristan for the fixed cost.
So with also the fixed cost, we need to understand that there's a lot of moving parts into this machine. So you have to replace the membranes every 5 years. So we accounted that for every 5 years you're going to purchase a membrane, but we also said that the inflation is mandatory. What was worth 5%, 5 years from now is going to increase with a 2%, and it will grow gradually every year. For membranes every 5 years, and for pumps and equipment, it will be about every 15 years or so. And then everything else being equal, there's also labor costs, there's insurance, there's replacements and maintenance, there's disposal, which will go in more detail, as well as administration costs. We assume that this will be a flat fee for the next 30 years with a 2% growth in inflation.
So with everything taken into consideration, we have our model right here. You can see the revenue, the operating profit, and the depreciation as we have calculated. Therefore, we come up with a line of free cash flow all the way from this year to 2052. It's worth noting that 120 million here is our initial cost, initial investment. We we invest 750 euros per cubic meter of plant capacity, and that times 160,000 is 120 million of initial investment. As for the remaining of the years, we know that the plant is going to run at a loss until 2027, by which it will turn profitable about 574,000 euros. And so after we got the free cash flow for every year, we need to estimate what's the project is going to be valued at the end of its life in 30 years. We know that the salvage value is made of by land and the net book value of buildings. The land we estimated at 28 million euros, and the net book value of building. We believe that the building is going to be depreciated at around 50 years. So after 30 years, it's going to be valued at $21 million. And with that, we come up with a salvage value by 2052 of 49.8 million euros.
So now that we've gone through all the evaluations of salvage and the cost of free cash flow, but we need to bring that till today. So we were given the 11% weighted cost of capital, but we wanted to dive a little bit deep further. We added a premium for considerations that we believe are of importance of the future. Because this government has just recently turned over, there's a political instability that must be considered. The idea that a new party might come in and might change a lot of these agreements. So we added an extra percentage for that. But then there's also a government deficit. This new government wants to increase spending, but the potential investors outside of this country may see that as a deterrent of investment. So raising funds in this country will be much more difficult. Also, foreign exchange risk. The idea that if we attract these global investors, that they also might want to be in considerations of these foreign exchange, so that in order to have a reasonable weighted average cost of capital, we then added these three into the original 11% to come to a 15% WACC.
So now that Tristan had explained the way we come up with the discount rate of capital, with discount rate, we now have the present value of 4 variations. So adding the sum of the free cash flow with the salvage value, we have the project value right now at 125 million euros. And we believe, and we know that this project is going to be funded by 50% debt, 50% equity, half of it is going to be equity. So with 1 million shares issued, we finally come up with a share price of around 63 euros. It's worth noting that we invested 120 million into this project. So the ROI for the project is going to be 4%.
For this project, we also look at different ways to make it more sustainable and long-lived in the future, so that more people will be able to get fresh water. So we look at these following ideas to make this project more sustainable. Firstly is to repurpose brine, which is our currently waste disposed, and also shifting towards a more renewable energy. In this case, we are suggesting solar power. And lastly, to achieve a bigger scale of this project in order to satisfy as the population is growing in the future.
For the first recommendation, we believe that this is a brilliant idea to improve your profitability and also to make the project more environmentally friendly. Let me show you something, Dave. So this glass of water is half full, half empty. But for every liters of water you produce, you're going to also produce 1 liters of brine, which is a huge disposal waste that you are going to dispose to the Mediterranean seas later. It causes environmental problems, and it costs you to spend money on disposal waste as well as making you losing on revenue. That's why we think that this is a huge opportunity for us to see a second source of revenue. We may spend R&D on how to use brine, for example, in salt for the road in snowy way, or in chemicals industry, and so on. Therefore, we can add an additional line of revenue, which we estimate to be 10% of the current revenue we got from water. We also cut the disposal waste because now we make use of all the brine that we are producing. And in addition, of course, we are going to spend more on R&D and on treatment cost for brine, but that's gonna be offset by the additional revenue that we have from brine. So we built another model for this, and we think that with the recommendation, you are going to come up with a higher valuation of 150 million for the project, a share price of 75 euros compared to the 63 that I just told you before, and an ROI of now 25%. So I would like to show you the model, but here it is.
But we also, with Brian, we also said solar energy. Recently, only 5% of your energy use comes from solar panel, but we're talking about 30 years, 15 years in the past. Well, who's not to say right now when Tesla makes their more efficient batteries that solar energy becomes the new source of energy. So we'll go from 5% hopefully to 50, and then by 30, you're fully sustainable through solar energy.
And for the second recommendations, we believe that the plant can be increased in capacity. So we look at other countries and other projects that they made in their countries. For example, Israel, they are having the largest desalination project in the world, which produces 624,000 cubic meters per day and serve 20% of the freshwater need for 1.5 million people. So we believe that for now, at 160,000 cubic meters capacity, our plant is only going to serve 13,000 people, which is not even the entire population of Sara City, not to mention the other region in the country. So the plant has the capacity to increase the number of cubic waters produced per day. With this, we are able to sell more water without increasing price and of course increase our profitability hence.
Now, we've given you the recommendation, we have all the numbers, but how do we go from plan to action? And let's start with the short term. In the short term, obviously as investors, you need to secure your debt. Some way of getting $60 million to help fund this project. Second, it is a huge project. This is a plant that's going to last for 30 years. So we need to start doing our due diligence. Who are the talents, the resources required to build this thing? Whether you do it through an auction, through bidding war, through the government, or do your own research. We also have an opportunity to build an ESG metrics. As a mutual fund holder, potential investors who have a social responsible investment mindset can see this as a great opportunity for helping those who get access to clean water. It is a commitment to then have great impacts on the environment, the social aspects such as water access, and the government, the political stability. And then lastly, obviously within the short term, we've got to start. The sooner we get this off the ground, the more people that benefit from this project. But then we go to the medium term. This is where we have to start reviewing the ESG metrics. It's very hard to find metrics that are accurate. Therefore, it's always required to have a continuous updates on what these factors would be so that when it's SRI, social responsible investors, have some sort of basis to understand what actual level of impact you have on this project. And then with our recommendation, for the first one was repurposing of brine. Because the cash flow was unprofitable for the first couple of years, this is not a great time to start developing that, using the R&D to repurpose brine. But only if we start making profit in the medium term can we start using other methods to repurpose the brine. And then thirdly, shift towards solar energy. We're talking about 10 years here. Hopefully by 10 years, solar energy becomes the new norm, knowing that sustainability is also the key driver of that.
So for the long-term implementation, the key timeline in this case will be around 30 years. We'll look to sell down to the government. So the government will buy back this private company. So before buying back the company, they'll need to review the financial current positions as well as refining their valuations to see what kind of price can they set and what kind of price can they offer to the buyer. At the same time, they're also re-evaluating the sustainability of the current projects, such as repurposed brine, as well as like the solar power or any other renewable or sustainable power sources that are able to implement into this project. And lastly, they'll look to expand into various regions as well as, if possible, like other countries who are looking into get fresh water as well as for their citizens, but who don't have enough financial help current right now in order to get that fresh water to their citizens.
So in conclusion, we believe that the project is a very profitable and also beneficial project for the citizens of Sarawak, for the government and all stakeholders involved. We believe that there is room to improve the profitability of the project, including repurposing brine, moving to solar energy, and to increase the capacity. And with the current valuation, at 2019, we can issue a price at anywhere from 63 euros to 75 euros, depending on whether you implement our recommendation.
So with this project in mind, we know that there is so many beneficials coming to the citizen. However, we also consider some risk that comes with it as well. So first risk would be the corruption of the current government. We look at the likelihood of this is from low to medium since they just got elected from the majority. Therefore, they are currently gaining a lot of trust from the public. That's why they should carry forward keeping their promises to make the citizen healthy and keep their well-being up to rate in order to get the re-election again in the future. Therefore, how to mitigate this risk? Currently, the current government is adopting an anti-corruption policies that will help to eliminate any corruption risk. At the same time, given that they'll need to get re-elected again in the future, they need to keep their promise kept. And second risk would be inconsistent cost of energy. As electricity cost is fluctuated, they need to look to mitigate this risk by looking at renewable sources like we suggest solar power. So with this project in mind, we hope that with this bottle, with this glass of water that I started at the beginning, now that the Syra citizens will be able to look at this water and say, it's half full. Thank you.
So how did you estimate the additional source of revenue with the brain project? For example, the 10%. How did you fix this 10%?
So we believe that right now, brine is a disposal waste, which means they haven't discovered an obvious use for it as revenue. But as it's concentrated salt water, we see a lot of use in the medical, chemical, and also construction industry. And we are being conservative to say that it's at 10% of the water, even though the amount that we are producing is going to be the same level as the water.
And same thing for example, the additional R&D costs, and it's the 5%, and I think that there was hypothesis that maybe we can have some expectation about those hypotheses, because the impact is real here. We can find this, the idea is really interesting, but just I want some explanation about those hypotheses.
Sure. So the idea that the disposal waste took a percentage of the actual cost, as well as we're looking to see that the revenues are offsetting not only transportation revenue, transportation, and as well as the treatment and the additional like transportation costs, as I said earlier. So the idea is that we use 10% as a way to gauge like a higher profitability. It's revenue, but that's not profit. The idea that we want to see it be repurposed, the main goal being not being thrown back into the ocean. So yes, 10% may be, I'd say, arbitrary, but the idea is that it's a way to represent a shift in costing, so that when these revenues increases, that the costs are covered through this revenue selling. So 10% allowed us also to show that reflection in the recommendation of 25% return on investment.
Maybe it will be just interesting to make some sensitivity analysis, something like this, some interval value to explain this uncertainty for those hypotheses. Thank you.
Could you explain why you upgrade that
Yes.
15%, the difference is 4%?
The premiums you added.
Yes.
How did you come up with 4%, basically?
So the idea that the debt that was raised, that we're just going to fund it, it was projected to be 11% flat. So therefore, you've already made your due diligence on things related to like foreign exchange interest rates and such like that. But then the political instability, it's hard to say knowing the fact that it will equal 2%. We wanted to reflect an increase somehow. So whether it was related to 15%, we believe, given your portfolio, that you are able to maintain a 50% WACC. But hopefully the government has the stable government platform to then say that government instability is not a huge issue in 30 years from now. So that maybe in 30 years it will actually decrease WACC. But we want to show some level of increase so that for investors who want to invest in this project, they also are accounting for different types of risks that they may not foresee.
But are we really exposed to those risks? Like foreign exchange, we're only paying the local currency for the labor, and we're going to borrow in euros. So basically, we are naturally hedged. And as an institutional, if we can't get financing in the local currency, well, with the local government or local banks, we could go to either our own banks here or anywhere in the world. So would that still require premium, considering that the risks are specific to where you're investing, but you could mitigate them by just going abroad for the same investment?
So to answer your question regarding foreign exchange risk, we know that the debt is going to be raised by a multi-international large bank. So we need to borrow in euros and spend it in the Syria currency. So there is a certain currency exchange rate right there, because the government is under a pressure to keep the certain GDP growth level at the same rate as they are right now. Whereas there may be many instability regarding the new government. They may implement new policies and different changes so that they change the GDP per capita growth, which may depreciate our current economy. So that's the foreign exchange risk. Just another point we want to add to that 50%. I know that it's hard to quantify the 4% right now, but with 50%, we are being more conservative here. So if you want to use 11%, the valuation is only going to go up.
Could you quickly explain the initial investment of 1 million? I'm sorry, I don't see the number, but
120.
I don't see like the investment that were.
It's 160 times 750.
Yes, that's exactly that.
Yeah, that was exactly.
Mais on voit pas les investissements ici.
Non, c'est ça, mais c'est juste que la moyenne, c'est 750 $ par mètre cube.
Ils l'ont réévalué.
Ouais, c'est ça.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I am.
Have a good day. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.